cuarta Caravana Talk en esta caravana americana online. Les damos una gran bienvenida a esta presentación muy importante para las marcas de diseño. Tenemos con nosotros el día de hoy a un personaje increíble que ha sido parte de la historia de Caravana y del Lago. Él es Andy Butler. Es un diseñador gráfico de Inglaterra que está basado en la Ciudad de México, pero aquí estoy, hola. Pero que desde el 2005 hasta el 2016 trabajó para la plataforma de diseño en línea que se llama, bueno, Design Boom, todo el mundo la conoce. Fue editor y diseñador en Design Boom. Luego llegó a México y fundó su agencia que se llama The Dus y está enfocada en branding. Su agencia desarrolla campañas para Nike, Fox Sports, FIBA, Grupo Hábitat, Carla Fernández y Grupo Lago, que bueno, somos nosotros. Así que obviamente lo recomendamos muchísimo y siempre ha sido para nosotros un gran estratega en temas de comunicación y de branding. Así que por eso lo tenemos con ustedes. Espero que lo disfruten mucho y como va a estar en las sesiones, va a ser 30 minutos de su presentación para dar más espacio a sus preguntas y respuestas, ya que la presentación es muy general y luego va a querer Andy como escucharlos en sus temas particulares y entonces resolver esas dudas. La presentación va a ser en inglés, las preguntas las pueden hacer en español, aquí estoy yo para cualquier tema de traducción. Andy entiende perfecto inglés, digo español y lo habla, pero la va a dar en inglés para estar más cómodo, ¿ok? Andy.
Hola Gina, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien, ¿y tú?
Todo bien, gracias.
Gracias a ti por tu tiempo.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, so, well, thank you everybody for joining. I can't see who's here, so hi. Should I start already or? Okay,
yeah, 25 people, so I think we're ready to go. And
okay.
More are on Facebook Live.
Okay, so just before I start, because I guess there's a mix of experience in the audience, what we're going to do is go through branding in a general overview, what I think are the most important things to consider when you're doing your own branding project or for somebody else. And then at the end, we can have a chat and get into more detail. No, I'm sure, like, depending on who's watching this, they've got more specific questions and we can get into the nitty-gritty at the end. Okay? Okay, so let me share my screen.
Bueno, yo me despido, los dejo con Andy y nos vemos al final.
Okay, so sharing the screen. Okay, can you guys see?
Sí, se ve perfecto, Andy.
Okay, I'm gonna go full screen with this guy. Okay, all right, so a little bit about me. Like Gina mentioned, that I'm from England, grew up in Greater Manchester, was born in Rochdale, grew up in Oldham, which are both towns like 15 minutes away from the center of Manchester. So that was pretty much where I got interested into visual culture, probably through going to record shops with my dad and going to the video store, that kind of thing, like probably a lot of people. Then when it came time to go to university, I chose to go to a small college in Blackpool, which is a seaside town, very well known in England. It's kind of like Coney Island or something like that, like a mix between Coney Island and what, like, there's a bunch of casinos and things like that there. It's really kitsch, but with a lot of rich history. So I studied graphic design there at a small college, which is part of Lancaster University. That was great. I think the course gave me a really good foundation in terms of graphic design. And then I applied to be a graphic designer at the website designboom.com, which is based in Milan. And I started off there in 2005 as an intern and slowly got more involved in different things, from graphic design to web design, exhibition design, lots of different things, a lot of writing, a lot of interviews, helping the company grow. I worked side by side with the owners, Massimo Mini and Birgit Lohmann, and they taught me a ton of stuff. Part of that job was working with big brands like Swarovski, or trade shows like ICFF and Tokyo Design Week, London Design Festival. We worked with a lot of people, did a lot of exhibitions, and I also got to interview a lot of famous people, famous architects, famous designers, and learn a lot, basically. It was, you know, a really life-changing experience in terms of the people I got to meet. And that helped me a lot in terms of thinking what I wanted to do in the next chapter now, which was focus on branding, both from a communications standpoint and from a design standpoint. So here you'll see it's from 2005 to 2016 that I worked for Design Boom, but at least half of that time I was here in Mexico, back and forth to begin with, and then the last 7, 8 years I've been here most of the time, still traveling a little bit for work and fun, but I'm definitely, you know, based in Mexico City full time now. So then 4 years ago, I started Deduce, which is focused on branding, and we work with different sizes of companies and clients. Sometimes it's creating a brand from scratch. Sometimes it's helping a company tell their story in a more powerful way. We do a little bit of everything, you know. We develop brand identities. We develop campaigns, all kinds of brand assets, which is like photography, video, printing, packaging, web. We work with a variety of people, so the thing is that we use the experience from the big clients to help the smaller clients. I think that's something important to say. Today we're not going to go into too much of our work, but if you go to our website, which is deduce.design, you can have a look through almost everything we've done the last 4 years, or our Instagram, which is pretty much up to date. So today we're going to talk about branding. Really broad topic. Simply put, branding is everything, and everything is branding when it, you get down to it. What do I mean by that? So branding is who you are, who you want to be, how you want to be perceived, and it's also the expectations you set, how you deliver on those expectations with your audience, and it's also about managing the consistency of the experience that your audience has with you. So branding's everything, A lot of the times people think of it of just the brand identity, like the logo, the color scheme, the typography, but it's a lot more than that. And we'll see that right now. So the way this presentation is put together is the process, So for me, when we talk about branding, the most important thing is the start, the research and the evaluation. Because when you start working on a brand, it should be seen as a long-term relationship, right? You've got to be sure that you want to get involved in this, because to do it well is a ton of work. It's gonna take a lot of time to build a really solid brand. And like any, relationship, there's gonna be ups and downs. There's gonna be moments when it feels like it's working and moments when it feels like it's not working, and you gotta stick with it, right? So the next few slides are imagined with questions that you should be asking when you begin your project. So let's start with why. Why should your brand exist? Why do you want to create it? What insights give birth to the brand? Usually, like, I think people get excited about something and that's when they start their brand or think about starting a brand, no? And I think that that's important, to save that energy somehow, no? It's like, you have to remember what you got excited about when you put the name down on paper, or you have that kind of aha moment where you think like, oh, wouldn't it be good if this service existed or this product existed? And then it's another thing that happens is that you see a gap in the market. No, you're experiencing another brand and you think there's things wrong with it, but it's the best thing around, or it's the closest to what you think something should be. And you decide to take it upon yourself to create that brand, to fill that space. And when you see these questions on paper, it can seem a little bit daunting. Like, you can think that nothing new deserves to exist, no? Like, why add more chaos to an already chaotic world, or that type of thing? But, it doesn't have to be profound, It can be like your unique selling point, your USP, which is something that everybody goes on about in, business and branding especially. Your USP doesn't have to be, complicated. It can be geographic, right? So you can aim to be the best at what you do in your neighborhood or in your town or in your city, because, you went somewhere on holiday and you saw a brand and you want to bring that back, no? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That can be your USP. And then it can be about delivering a superior service, no? So, for example, a good example is a restaurant that we worked on in Houston selling tacos, right? They were sick of the Tex-Mex food and they felt like there should be some authentic Mexico City style tacos there, and from a food standpoint they nailed it. And for us, that was really easy to work with because it was like, that was their concept. No, there's nothing radical. It's just a gap in the market, and you need to have that really clear and focus on that, put it down. And another thing might be price point, no? So like, I think if you look at something like Miniso in Mexico, that's a good example of a lot of people liking things like, what's it called? Muji, which is famous all around the world, but didn't exist in Mexico. And obviously they've sort of filled that void, but with a slightly less quality. But it's a perfect brand for Mexico, at least Mexico City. And then the last thing I want to talk about on this is that when you figure out your selling point and the why, like, think back to why you started your brand, like, write it down, convince yourself of it. No, you have to convince yourself of it, because if you can't convince yourself of it, then probably, you either haven't figured out all the details of why this brand deserves to exist, or it doesn't deserve to exist, Then next thing is who's your audience? Who are you going to target? No, like, who are going to be your customers and sustain your business? How well do you know them? A lot of the times you might be the audience, no? So it might be you and your gang of, friends might be the audience, might be the clientele for a restaurant, or the people that buy the clothes from your shop or your brand. Or it might be your client, you know, if you're branding a project for somebody. Like, it's not that difficult to figure out who your clients are, who your audience are. But if it's not obvious, you need to do quite a bit of work there and figure out who you're really talking to, what their needs are. Be sure what you're saying is actually real, no? Like, I think it's important that brands are not a fantasy, you know? Like, they have to be reflective of the real world in order to be successful. They can't exist in a vacuum, you know? So then the other thing is, like, how do you keep up to date with these people, with your audience? No, you need to befriend them. You need to know what's going on. An easy way to do that is, you know, to be part of that crowd. So, you know, I would say half the people that work at Nike are, you know, fitness fanatics or sports enthusiasts or culture vultures, you know, and they know exactly what's going on among their audience. Same in fashion, no? Like, Gina is really up to date with everything that's going on in Latin American fashion because she's part of that scene. She's not just selling to the people that like it. And then what we do as an exercise, which is a little trick from a marketing research project that I was involved in, is consolidate your audience into a profile, no? So say you're researching for a particular client, you might have one or two key profiles, no? That they're the reoccurring person that comes back, no? So it might be, you know, one profile might be like someone middle-aged with a lot of expendable income, and that might be your main kind of profile, no? So you can really sort of understand everything that that person is interested in, from the music they listen to the restaurants they go to the places they go on holiday, to the movies they watch, etc. No? And you build a profile for that person, and that's the person to keep in mind when you're making decisions. And there might be 2 or 3 of those people, no? Because brands usually don't just have one core sort of audience profile. They usually have 1 or 2, sometimes even more, depending on the scope of the brand. So those are some little tricks that we do, no? And then how? This is where it starts getting into, you know, the fun part for me is like, how are you going to get people's attention? How are you going to communicate your unique selling point? What brand assets will you need to create? So, like, do you need photography? Do you need graphics? Do you need, you're probably going to need everything, no? But it's like, you have to start thinking about all that stuff right from the beginning. And then what platforms will they live on, no? So you'll see that something like TikTok is more relevant for a younger audience, something like Instagram for a slightly different audience, something like radio advertising for another one, print advertising for another. Like, where will your audience get to know about you, no? So you've got to be speaking to somebody, no? Something that I always kind of tell our team is that we're problem solvers and we're communicators, and we're translating the needs of a brand into messaging. We're not artists, you know, we're like, you know, maybe I'm a sort of, what's it called? Wannabe artist or something, but we're creating things for people. They go out into the world and they live there. And if they're totally abstract and nobody understands them, then that's not going to work for a brand, no? And I would argue that most artists are a kind of brand anyway, and they know perfectly what they're doing. But you got to be evaluating like how you're going to make this thing work. Something that I like to do is look at related industries, no? So we worked with a yacht broker, which is a very niche market, no? Like, selling yachts is probably like 0.5% of the population can afford a yacht. So we didn't want to look at what other people were doing in that industry in isolation, no? So we looked at luxury car brands, which there's a bigger audience for. We looked at luxury hotels, luxury, jewelry. Like, there's other things connected to the world that you're talking to, right? So with sports, it can be science, or it could be, arts and culture. So look for things that are related to what you're doing in other industries, and take inspiration from there, not just the industry that you're operating in or that your client is operating in. So when you've done all your homework, you can start building the brand. Like, if you've done all that homework and you say to yourself, like, yeah, we've got something, we've got a unique selling point, we believe in this brand still, it deserves to exist, then you're going to start the building process. And building is the right word, no? It takes time to build a brand, and it's piece by piece, no? It's filling in the details, it's, step by step, all those type of analogies. Like, a brand doesn't just come into existence. Even if a brand launches with lots of things in place, like it's really tightly put together, it's going to take a minute for the audience to respond to it and buy into the brand. So, like, I'm going to say this a bunch of times, like, it's a process, it takes time, and like I said before, it's a long-term relationship. So to start with, you're going to have to develop a brand strategy. The first thing you want to do, probably, if you're like me, is start drawing and sketching logos and grabbing photographs for your mood board and all the rest of it. And that's fine. I think it's good to start that whenever you feel inspired, like, it's these steps that I'm about to go through, like, this is probably the preferable way to go through everything, but things happen at once, no? Like, it's not like a science, no? A lot of it's intuition. It's like part science, part intuition, no? So your strategy, what is this? It's your compass, you have to have a plan, and it's your vision and it's your objectives that keep you on track. Because once you get down into a day-to-day situation, you can quickly lose track of what you wanted to do in the beginning. You can start following trends that are not relative to your brand. You can start getting influence from other people that maybe don't know the bigger idea, the bigger picture. So I think it's important, well, it's not important, it's crucial that you have a strategy. You'll have to forgive me for this pretty ugly looking thing on the right here, but this is the best synthesis, or one of the best syntheses that I could find for a brand strategy. Because one, the ones we work on are confidential, right? And so should yours be. This is something that I found online, and I use it to explain that there's a bunch of details, no? So it's vision, purpose, values. This is for a cookie brand. So these cookies are imagined to be the best tasting, guilt-free pleasure that is in the cookie market. They've got financial goals. They've got key issues that they want to address. And then the strategies are transformed into tactics, no? So it's important when you're developing a strategy to have a couple of routes, no? So typically you're taught to do like from A to B to C to D, no? And you might say year one is step A, year two is step B. In reality, it's probably not going to play out like that. So I always say, like, you need to have like milestones where you reach a milestone, and then you decide, like, is, for example, look at this year, no, with COVID. a lot of people probably didn't have their digital communications plan as on point as they needed it to be. And the situation forced them to focus on digital because people couldn't go to, you know, physical places as easily or for a while, no? So when you're developing a strategy, it's important to have like options in the road, no? Not just like a one road from here to becoming a millionaire or whatever the goal is. You're gonna have to have like more kind of like a tree, you know? There's a really good image available online, which is a sketch by Walt Disney of how he imagined all the different things of the Disney company doing and how they fed into each other, right? And it's genius because, I mean, it's a business plan, it's not a brand strategy, but it gives you the idea of how integrated that brand was from very early on. And that's what you need to be thinking about when you develop a brand strategy, right? So measuring success. A business success is typically measured in its, you know, financial stability and growth, but brand success can be measured a little bit differently, in my opinion. You might not get off to, you know, a crazy start with your sales and that type of thing, but you can still be building your brand visibility through the press, through collaborations with other people, through things like this, where you're collaborating with initiatives and spreading the word about the brand, and you can track it through the people that are engaging with your brand, that are following your social media accounts, that type of thing, and you can see how it's growing. So when you're doing your strategy, you need to think big and think long term. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And it's a little bit like, you know, the crime investigation, like what's the motive? That's your USP. What's the means? Like that's your brand assets and all the things that you're going to create to sell your product. And then the method, which is your communication. So like that's one of the ways that we think about that. Messaging. Next most important thing before you start putting, you know, money into photography and design and that type of thing, like, can you explain your brand in a few paragraphs? Can you explain it in a few sentences? Can you explain it in a few words? Like, think about places where you have to talk about your brand, no? So it could be a presentation, could be your website, could be the description in your LinkedIn profile. It could be the description in your Instagram profile, no? Could be a 2-minute, well, no, 1-minute talk in an elevator, you know, the famous elevator pitch. What's your tone of voice gonna be? You know, so like, how do you give personality to the brand? This is super important as well, right? Because this is the voice that people hear in their head when they're reading your communication or thinking of your product, no? So like, for me at least, like Apple has a voice, Nike has a voice, Coca-Cola has another voice, and those voices are created through their communication and their messaging. So is it funny? Is it serious? Is it insightful? Is it proud? And another thing is like letting your audience know how to interact with you. Like, you don't have to hit them over the head and say like, buy this, but you should say where things are available, when they're going to be released. It's impressive how much that stuff's forgotten, no? So it's like you're telling people about something, but you don't tell them how they can spend their money with your brand or where they can find it, that type of thing. So a call to action is super important as well when you're talking about messaging and developing your brand. Touch points. So this is basically every place that people come in to interact with your brand, no? So it could be digital experiences, which are like your website, social media, newsletters. Nowadays, people are using WhatsApp a lot, even though I find that a bit annoying. phone calls, no, like when people call your studio or your shop, when you call other people, that's all branding. Physical experiences, so obviously your product, you know, like whatever that is, your packaging, your stationery, point of sale displays. If you've got a store, then that store should be a little capsule of your brand, you know, down to the uniform that you wear. That everything is branding, no? So what you'll see here is some work that we did with Carla Fernandez. That was a really fun project, and hopefully relevant to the people who are watching today. It's a Mexican fashion label, and it's got a lot of theory and like thinking behind it, right? Like there's a lot of social responsibility to communicate. There's a lot of thinking behind the collections. No, they're all rooted in Mexican culture, and there's a lot for people to like. It's a very rich brand, but obviously you can't say everything everywhere all the time. So what we developed was assets for that client to start to tell their story and give them pieces, glimpses of that story, right? So on the labels, we commissioned these illustrations from Maria Conejo, she's called, if you look for her on Instagram or whatever. And she was already a friend of Carla's husband, Pedro Reyes, and I saw her work and I thought that would be perfect for Carla in terms of like having this, it looks a little bit like things that you've seen historically from illustrators in Mexico, no, like Covarrubias and people from like back in the day, Carlos Merida, that type of thing. And so we developed these illustrations, and on the inside of the label, they tell you a little bit about the technique used to make your garment and where it was made. And then every collection has this rich backstory, but a lot of people didn't get to know about that, you know, they just bought the things on a purely like aesthetical level. So every collection, we came up with the idea of developing a zine, no, like a little magazine that explains the collection and explains the brand. And since a lot of the customers of Carla are very loyal and they buy a few pieces from each collection, slowly their knowledge of the brand is growing with each of these magazines and each piece they buy from the collection, no? So through that, you're building brand equity. That's one of the things that we came up with during the brand strategy. We executed that. We developed the first 3, and then we also sort of gave a bit of guidance on the subsequent ones, which are done by Carla's in-house team. So that's like a good way of getting your story into touch points that are unexpected, no? So look for opportunities in your touch points, no? Okay, brand assets. So once you've got everything clear in terms of like the messaging and your strategy, all the rest of it, you're gonna have to start producing the brand assets. So that's like graphic design, photography, video, copywriting, and it all has to be cohesive, right? Whether it's digital, physical, it has to look and feel part of the same world. And here's where you need to invest. Obviously, small brands don't have a lot of money, but you need to spend as much money as you can afford in this, because this is how people are going to perceive your brand, especially now that, you know, almost all first impressions are formed online, either through social media or websites. You need to invest in photography. You need to invest in copywriting, and what you can't do yourself, you know, hire people or look for a way to collaborate with them. So a lot of times we've worked with photographers that wanted to do more of a certain thing, but needed the opportunity, and we gave them that opportunity, and we managed to negotiate like really good fees because they would have a portfolio piece and we would have a really powerful image, you know, for a fee that the client could afford. So find a way to do the things as well as possible, no? Like, obviously you have to do a bunch of stuff in-house to begin with, but, you know, unless it's something that you excel at, like, you should be looking to bring in the best that you can afford, right? Digital or die. Like I just said, everything's online these days. So you need a digital presence, and your assets online need to be as good as they can be. Be super critical, no? We talk about the paranoid gene in the office, no? Be paranoid, be critical of what you're making and if it could be better. Obviously, don't let, you know, perfect be the enemy of good and delay things to the point where you're not doing anything because you're, you know, sort of frozen with fear of what people will think. You have to make things, you have to put it out into the world and see what works now. And the last thing is like collaboration as a catalyst. Like, through working with other people, more people will know about your brand, no? So your brand assets can be an opportunity to grow awareness of your brand, not just to make things. Communication. So all the stuff that I've talked about up until now is fairly useless unless you learn how to communicate what you've got and why people should care about what you're doing. So again, this is something like, if you don't know how to do it, look to form a collaboration, right? Like, you might be making really beautiful products, but not able to communicate them in a powerful way. And so less people know about them than they should. And so your business is slower than it could be, etc. Right? Sell your project to these people, because I can talk from myself, like, we work with big brands, but we love working with smaller brands that we think have got like a cultural relevance and can allow us to do more creative work than brands that are big and rigid. So yeah, look to bring people on board. No, you'd be amazed what a bit of consideration on writing can do, no? Storytelling, professional photography versus in-house photography, all that kind of stuff, no? Professional video editing versus in-house. So the bare minimum, you've got to be discoverable online, no? So if I put your name into Google, I got to be able to find information about you or the company that you work for and your services, no? That's a given. You've got to be on all the platforms that are relevant to your brand. And you've got to be making a concerted effort to keep those things up to date. If you can afford it, you've got to be investing in campaigns and media partnerships, no? So making sure that beyond the people that are looking for you, you are communicating to people and helping them find you. So like, social media is amazing for that. Like, we've seen with Caravana, the growth of the audience through strategic media partnerships with magazines and websites that we know the audience of those publications will love what Caravana are doing. And then through campaigns, like, the algorithms on social media are fantastic in my experience, in terms of, you know, for as little as 250 pesos per week, you can gain 100, 200 followers that are real people and are interested in what you're doing. And like, that's helped us a lot in terms of getting seen. Management. The word makes people think of like boring stuff, because it's the most difficult, right? The fun part is making everything's new and shiny, and managing a brand is the day-to-day, no? And like everything, there's good days, bad days, etc. But making a brand, like, the image and the customer experience go hand in hand. Like, how a brand is managed and maintained is really important, and it's crucial to how the equity is built, right? So like, take something like Coca-Cola, amazing branding and everything. If they started making Coca-Cola that tasted awful, you know, you'd notice, right? Like everyone talks about the difference between Mexican Coke and Coke in other places, that type of thing. So people notice everything. You've got to manage, like, as soon as you can as a brand, you need someone focused on managing the brand, right? Like, because the owner of the brand, the driving force behind the brand is usually involved in developing the business strategy, not always the brand strategy, no? Like sometimes yes, but not always. So you've got to have someone being critical on the inside of a brand, and not always relying on outsiders to, sort of propel or maintain the brand. Consistency is the key to how the brand is perceived. You got to communicate consistently the values. You can develop different looking campaigns and that type of thing, but the overall message and the overall vibe has to be part of the same world so that you don't confuse people and alienate them. Brands have got to be developed in a way that they can adapt and transform to new opportunities without losing their values. So the easiest one that I can think of is like physical to digital. So the shop or the restaurant that you are developing has to be reflected in its online communication. You can't have an amazing restaurant with terrible photographs and a non-existent website. You might be lucky and people can rely on word of mouth, but like if COVID and this whole pandemic taught you anything, is like, now you need to be online, and vice versa. Like if you've got a physical product like clothing, you should have a showroom at least where people can come and touch and place orders with you. You don't necessarily need a store, but you got to think about how you're going to help people experience the brand. Last point is slow and steady wins the race. Like don't be making erratic decisions with your brand. Like things happen, political stories come out and brands embark on a politically driven initiative that lasts for a month and then there's no follow-up. That's awful. A new fad comes out and you're trying to communicate through that trend or that fad. Just take a step back, evaluate what you're doing and question if it really adds value to the brand. So just to resume, research and evaluation, strategy, messaging, assets, communication, management and evolution. Those are the steps. If you want to get into more detail in your own time, these are 3 books that I highly recommend. Like the first one, Branding in 5.5 Steps, is like a Bible in our office. It's by Michael Johnson, who runs a studio called Johnson Banks in London. He used to work at Wolf Olins, which is one of the most important branding agencies in the last, 50, 60 years. And also books by his former boss, Wally Olins, are really interesting on branding. Like they'll serve as like a good foundation if you want to get into like real nitty gritty. Ogilvy on advertising, that's like something they make you read at college. Anything to do with communication and selling, like this guy was a genius. And then Marshall McLuhan, Understanding Media. This is more academic, but it gives you a really good understanding of how media in the broadest sense works on from like print to television to radio, etc. And it's still relevant now. Like it's probably 50, 60 years old, that book. Maybe not quite, but it's super relevant to understanding how narrative works and how we sort of perceive things. Okay, that's everything. I hope it wasn't too long.
No, it was great, concise, useful.
Okay, so how do I turn this off? I'm going to stop sharing the screen.
Okay.
And here we go. So
as of now, we only have one question.
okay.
It says, Andy, could you share the Disney sketch?
Yeah, let me look for it.
We have another question already.
Do you have any questions, Gina?
Yeah.
Or...
What do you think about specializing in a specific field or market? Do you think it might give your business a true advantage?
Well, like it's like the, what do you call it? It's like specialist and generalist, no? I think you have to, okay, how do I answer this? You have to know the limitations of what you're good at and what you can do to a really high standard. And in areas where you can't deliver at the highest, like usually you become known for one thing, right? In my case, like I started on graphic design and then I somehow ended up on like, you know, communication, and like there's things that I'm not amazing at and I'm still learning how to do, and those are the things that I always bring in other people to help me with, no? So I would say, like, you know, I can take a decent photograph of my wife and son, but I'm not going to put my name forward as the photographer for Nike. You know what I mean? So you got to know where your limitations are. And when you're asked to do a project beyond your limitations, look to collaborate. I mean, I think that's super important. I've got the Disney sketch, but I don't know how to.
Can you put it on the chat or on the, yeah, chat? There's a chat down.
Okay, 1 second. It's not the Q&A, right? It's the chat. Okay.
The chat is better.
Let me drag this in here.
También nos pueden hacer preguntas en español y puedo traducir cualquier cosa, ¿ok? Ya tenemos otra pregunta. What are your thoughts on organic growth of an account in Instagram? Do you think it is possible for a small brand to be successful, or definitely have to grow through paid advertising?
It's increasingly important to spend money because, like, the way I see these big tech brands, they're kind of like drug dealers, no? They give you a free taste and then you're hooked, and then then you have to spend money, right? Because that's how it works. I mean, what you've seen from our projects, no, with Caravana, right? In the beginning, we got a lot of organic growth through the content, no, and through the activity that we were communicating. And then it was like, oh, any post with graphics on is maybe considered like advertising, and they place it to the back of the feed, no? So if you want something with graphics to be seen, you generally have to pay for that to be seen, right? And just the nature of changing the algorithm, right? From chronological to like random, no? So for example, I've read things like accounts that have 10,000 followers, all kind of people, real people, organic, only maybe 1,000 people ever see one particular post, no? You have to dig into the profile, go through what they've been up to. And you can see, I mean, like, you don't have to spend a lot. Like, that's what we're seeing, no? Like, you don't have to spend like tons, but you do have to spend money, I think, like to grow. And like I was saying, like it is, what's the word? Like it's still organic, but you need that like artificial intelligence that they've got working for you, and they're charging you for it, no? I mean, that's how it works. So, yeah.
Good answer. I think I could add that you can spend little, and that's going to be better than spending nothing.
Exactly. That's the best way to wrap that answer up, yeah.
Okay, another question. Do you think it is a mistake to always promote your products on your social media?
No, I think it's, I mean, like I was saying before, no, you can have the most beautiful imagery and graphic design, and if it only lives on your website, then like you're denying yourself a whole audience. No, like there's this approach of being kind of like exclusive and hard to find and all that kind of thing, but that's a luxury, you know. Usually the people that can get away with that have got a backstory that allows for it, no? So like either they're extremely wealthy and connected to begin with, that they can rely on, you know, a small network to sustain themselves and they don't need to communicate. Like proper branding work is to, you know, it's propaganda. I mean, you want as many people to know about you as possible, because even if, you know, thousands of people know about you, like there's only a small percentage that are going to spend money on you or like invest in projects with you, know? So I don't like, you gotta be considerate about what you're saying and how you're saying it, no? Like you don't want to be cheapening the product through the way you communicate it, but you should at least be discoverable, no? That's what I would say.
Okay, great. Hello from Cholula, Andy. Which would be the way to make an analysis of my brand to know what kind of branding I need? Do I have to ask for accessories from an expert first?
I mean, that book I just mentioned, the Michael Johnson Branding in 5.5 Steps, that's the best book on branding that I've come across in 20 years. Because he gives you a lot of visual examples. It's not like just theory, right? Like he'll say like, hey, we worked on this project for Amnesty International and this is what we did. We worked at, like, I would say get a book like that. Like when we, you know, right? I've given you a bunch of books like on branding because you have to be informed on it, no? Like it's no good hiring someone and then you don't really appreciate what they're telling you or have no way to evaluate it, right? It's like anything, you have to do your homework, and once you've done your homework, you can start to have conversations with different people, and then it's about finding the right fit, you know? Almost, it's very rare that someone comes to us and we get a job straight away, you know? They want to talk to us. They want to make sure that we understand what they're doing, that we can help them. Some people are really clear about wanting to work with people that have got experience in that market, no? So like, say it's fashion, they might want to work with a branding agency that knows fashion very well. You'll see that, no? You'll go to a branding studio's website and they tend to have like a focus. Ours, I would say, is the cultural market, cultural industry, because of my background at Design Booth.
Great. So some other questions. Do you see any branding trends and how they can be applied in the fashion industry that have risen due to COVID-19?
Well, a lot of the brands that I follow come from our work together now. So they're Latin American, like apart from the big ones, they're Latin American brands. And I see that they've almost all created like Shopify websites, which is really easy to do and easy to sell, no? So like trends, no, but I think like spending money on photography and video and being proactive, no? Like the cool thing about Instagram stories, for example, is that the nature of the platform, it's fine to do more informal things, right? So you're not necessarily looking for a super shiny, well-produced video on Insta stories, no, or Instagram live. It's quite fine for you to be in your showroom, presenting the pieces, getting into detail, and, you know, fabricate interest in the product, no? So like if you've got a client or you know somebody who works in the media that can generate a discussion about what you do to help you kind of sell yourself, then that's great, no? Like, I mean, a bit like this, we're friends, we're like, you know, you're one of our clients, we've worked with you for 5 years or so, but like this platform's allowing me to sell myself a little bit, no? And I think like that's like, there's been tons of Instagram lives, right? Like I didn't even watch one before COVID, you know? Now there's tons. I mean, now maybe there's too many. Make sure you have a context. But I would say, yeah.
We have one from Facebook, because you're also on Facebook Live, and she's asking, ¿cómo se puede construir una marca artesanal sin caer en la apropiación cultural?
Keep it authentic. I mean, cultural appropriation is a hot topic, right? But my point, like, you have to be, what's the word? So political topics, cancel culture, all that type of thing that's going on right now. It's a hot potato, right? But like, your gut will tell you when it's appropriation and when it's not. It's like, are you involving people from that culture in your project? And then the other thing is like, where do you draw the line, right? Like, if you look around you, you're surrounded by things that are not part of the culture where you are. I mean, you know, I go and buy coffee that's from God knows where. We live in a totally globalized world, right? It's nothing to do with a culture anymore, you know, like, how can I put it? You gotta be, I think you have to just use common sense, no? Use common sense when it comes to those things. Talk about it with people that maybe know more than you. So cultural appropriation, like it's like a fear factor now, no? Like a lot of people are scared of saying things or doing things that could offend someone, but we work in a creative industry, right? So if you limit yourself completely in terms of what you're gonna do because you're scared of doing anything, then the world's going to become really boring really quickly, right? Every major brand is inspired by something. There's always a story that it was robbed from somewhere else. Like that's the world, no? Like I think authorship is a bit of a boring topic. I used to be really focused on authorship, no? Like protecting my ideas. I came up with that, blah, blah, blah. No one comes up with anything 100% on their own, you know, like it's down to something you've seen, something you've read. Like, don't be scared, go for it and keep evaluating it. Show it to other people, no? Show it to your friends, show it to people that understand what you're trying to do. So like if it's a food project, bring people on board that are foodies and appreciate like what you're trying to do. If it's fashion, who do you know who's connected to that? Don't choose random people because then you'll get like random feedback, but don't be scared. I mean, get started, no? Like, I think the fear factor right now is like exhausting.
Yeah, I can add that there's this organization that's called Impacto NGO, y ellos son los que hacen lo del viernes tradicional. Y esta conversación es súper relevante para ellas y tienen en YouTube muchísimas diálogos y mesas redondas en las que han hablado de este tema, así que yo te recomiendo que busques Impacto NGO, en donde hablan acerca de estos temas, o que las contactes y es, yo creo que un buen comienzo.
Do your homework, no? Like I said, like I spent like half the presentation on that, no? Like, do your homework because it makes things more enriching and it helps you a lot on the communication side, no? Like, you can always tell when someone's bluffing or someone's got nothing to say, whether it's a brand or a person.
Okay, cool. So we've got four more questions.
Yeah.
What would you say are your 3 pillars to run a design studio focused on direction?
3 pillars. You gotta, like, again, you gotta be informed. Like, you can't operate within a bubble. So I always say, like, you're only as good as your references, and everything's stolen from somewhere. You just might not know the origin. So You know, like that used to happen to me a lot when I worked at Design Boom. I would say like, this is super cool. And Birgit, because she's a design historian, be like, that's taken from there. It's exactly the same. You'd be like, wow, it is. You just don't know it, right? And usually that's what originality is, usually like taking something obscure, giving it a twist, and presenting it in a new way or as something new, right? So like references, no, be informed, like read a lot about like cultural stuff, look to music, art. So like your team has to be informed, no? They have to be passionate. That's one thing, no? Like it can't just be a 9 to 5 job for anybody. So be informed. Generate a sense of teamwork, no? Like for me, most of the, like almost all the best studios that work in branding and communication are teams. They're not individuals, no? So like people like Pentagram or Collins, or, you know, here in Mexico, there's great studios like Anagrama. You know, like it's usually a team. So having a sense of a team, and have a team connection with your clients, no? Like I feel like I'm part of Caravana and like we're a team. And like, even if we're not working on a specific thing, we have a chat about it, right? Or like when we worked on Circolo Mexicano for a year, I didn't care that it was like loads more work than we signed up for, because I just wanted it to be a really great project. And people don't worry about the, like from the outside, you're never going to ask people about like how much they got paid. No, like I work with Lance Wyman on a daily basis. I don't know how much he got paid for the Mexico Olympics. I just know he did a historical project, right? You know, so like you got to you got to sustain a business, but at the same time, it's like if you want to break ground, you've got to do a lot of hard work. And then the third thing is like, be super self-critical, no? Like, don't just be following trends. Like, there's a lot of design studios that are amazing at presenting their work, like better than us for sure. But the work that they're doing is not really powerful. It's just the way that they're showing it, no? So like, it's got to be a bit of everything for it to be really good work, no? So like, if you're developing a logo, like, what's that logo trying to say? You know, where does it need to be used? Long answer, but.
Good. Okay, so Jonathan is asking, Andy, what do you think about a good brand obsolescence, considering the management about it?
Obsolescence. Okay, so like, I'm not sure what he means by that.
Me neither, to be honest. Jonathan, if you could ask us again.
Like the process is becoming obsolete, no longer used. Blockbuster Video. I mean, look at that. Holy shit, they totally missed the boat on streaming. Like, think about how much money that those guys had. Like, everyone had a Blockbuster account. Everyone, all over the, like, not the whole world, but in most of the Western world, they were huge, right? And it was a ritual. And they had Netflix online sending DVDs to people through the post, which everyone was like, what the hell? And I don't know who didn't see that coming, but it's just like, that is like, you could, like, I would have a Blockbuster on my, you know, Apple TV right now if it existed, because I've got all those memories of like Friday night going to the video store with my dad to choose a video, no? Or like, you know, going with your friend or your girlfriend or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and they just totally missed the boat. That's a good idea of not being relevant, no?
Good one. Okay, so Lili Carrillo says, me pasó que busqué una agencia de marketing para que me hiciera todo el branding. La elegí por una recomendación, pero al final no me gustó el resultado y no era el estilo para nada lo que yo estaba buscando. Con esta experiencia, ¿cómo me recomendarías buscar con quién trabajar?
It's different stuff. Marketing and branding are not the same thing. There's a lot of confusion about like who does what, right? Like you got to find, like I said before, like a marketing agency might be really good in developing you a marketing campaign, you know, like taking branding and making a campaign. But developing a brand is a niche market, no? And you need to know about different stuff. So like look for people that build brands and develop, what's the word? Yeah, develop brand equity, because campaigns are temporary things. Brands, if you do them right, they're way longer, right? So it's like, I always say like, the brand is the personality of the person. The campaign is the wedding or the birthday party or the baptism. Like they come and go, right? They're part of the story and they develop that story. They're milestones. But a marketing agency generally, it's the same thing with architecture, right? You have a lot of architecture studios doing their own branding, and most of it sucks because they're not focused on communication. They're developed on, they're focused on materials and could look really nice, but it's usually boring. That's what I would say. Like find someone focused on branding.
Totally correct. I learned that from you. I had no idea the difference between branding and marketing and all that stuff. Okay. So Alejandra Cervantes has the last question. I don't know if there's going to be something else popping up, but okay, I'll read it for you. La moda es un lenguaje y la experiencia física es irreemplazable. Hoy en día, después de la pandemia, ¿crees que el cliente estará listo a seguir en su experiencia en línea o definitivamente regresará a la experiencia física?
So I've seen a lot of different brands approaching this in different ways. No, you've got like these huge brands sending out samples and lookbooks that are like crazy, you know, expensive things to produce and ship. No, like I've seen people send in, I think it was Low, the leather brand, if that's how you say it, sent like a human scale lookbook to try and generate this physical thing. Like, yeah, like there's nothing like the physical product, right? But like, it's something that I know about in China. For the last 10 years, almost everyone does, like the people with, you know, money that can afford designer products, there's the equivalent of, say, like Palacio de Hierro, no? And they send a personal shopper to your house with a selection of clothes, and you choose a few things and you buy it. I think that it could end up becoming a bit like Avon, you know, that you have like a niche group of people that are like Carla Fernandez, no? She has like a group of people that buy continuously from her, no? They're like collectors more than customers. And like, you schedule a meeting and you go with 10 pieces and you have a coffee and you make the physical experience happen again, and you make it something special and safe. And you, like, I don't think you'll ever get rid of the physical experience, like food, right? I mean, it's one thing ordering the food to your house and it's another going to a restaurant. I mean, and I also want to say, like, on the COVID thing, like, if we're patient, I mean, the year passed, no, like really quickly, and it's been weird and it's been depressing. But time passes, and you know, before we know it, like we'll be back in those. Like now's a good time to evaluate what will you do, you know, when the time comes. So, how will you make it more special? Is that the question? Like, or am I misunderstanding it?
Yeah, I think she's just wondering if, and I think it's something everybody wonders, like we're scared that maybe everything is now happening online and people are buying so much online, and you know, like people are saving their businesses because they're actually exploiting the digital market. But she's asking if you think we'll go back to...
There's nothing like the real thing, no? Like that's the you know, there's nothing like the real thing. So it's like, yes, there'll be a percentage of people that stop. Like, it's going to change some habits, right? It's probably a while until you want to go to a mall with a bunch of, you know, few hundred people, few thousand people. But do I want to go to a boutique like Lago? Can I make a appointment there? You know, like if I'm really scared, you know, would you open 30 minutes earlier for me if I'm serious about buying stuff? Absolutely. I mean, that stuff's not going to go away easily. And like I said before, like people will adapt, people will change what they're doing. You know, that's, if you're serious, you will change, right?
Yeah, I think it has something to do with loyalty as well from your clients, and in a previous Caravana talk on the first Caravana online, we were talking about this, and basically there's brands that will definitely go totally online because there's no need to go touch, feel, and you know.
Depends what you're doing, right?
Exactly, but there's like, I think this niche of designers that are working with different materials every time. I think we will survive in this physical world, and obviously as my experience with Lago, I can say that the minute we open, the minute that we have people coming in, people are want to go out, but people want to touch things, so I wouldn't be that scared. I mean, and it's an opportunity. We now have an online shop, which we didn't have, so I think it's an opportunity to be in both worlds.
It's like it's a catalyzer, right? But like, I mean, think of it this way. I'm sure there's more online sales in winter than there is in summer because of the weather. Like, there's always things that are going to influence your habits, right? But I don't think physical experiences are going away. It's going to take a minute, but I mean, people want those experiences, and people eventually will want to be with people again. I mean, it's a super primal need, right? Okay.
Cool, Andy. Thank you. We got a great workshop, a great lesson, and I hope everybody here enjoyed it. We have a lot of good comments. If you can see, thank you. Gracias, super interesante. Love it. Thank you for sharing, Andy. And more on the Q&A. So, Andy, thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for everyone who joined us today. Yeah, if you want to know more, get in touch with us. And I think these type of things are great, no, for the communities. Use digital, but like, yeah, I love what you guys are doing, evolving the platform.
So hard. Okay, so thank you again, Andy, and we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Este video y toda la presentación la vamos a subir a YouTube mañana, pero ya está ahorita, va a estar en el momento en que terminemos, estará en Facebook. Así que si se perdieron de algo o quieren repetir, volver a ver alguna parte de la presentación, siempre tienen Facebook y nuestro canal de YouTube, que tiene todo este tipo de contenidos, tanto como profesionales, como de los Caravana Talks, y de todos los diseñadores que nos han acompañado en la versión online. Tenemos sus videos de sus procesos, de lo que son, de sus pasiones y demás, así que conózcanos allá arriba también. Thank you, Andy. It was a great closure for the Caravana Talks, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thanks for everything. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.